The history of the rainforest. Explore the majesty of tropical rainforests, from their evolution and human interaction to the conservation challenges they face today. Through this video, discover how deforestation and climate change threaten these vital ecosystems, and how innovation and global action offer paths towards their protection and sustainable coexistence. Chapter 1: The Dawn of Tropical Forests. Around 66 million years ago, at the end of the Mesozoic era, the world underwent a monumental transformation. The catastrophic impact that led to the extinction of the dinosaurs marked the beginning of the Cenozoic era, an era that would witness the birth and flourishing of tropical forests as we know them today. This period, characterized by a warm and humid climate, created the perfect setting for the emergence of rich and diverse ecosystems. The atmosphere, laden with CO2 and other greenhouse gases, generated higher global temperatures, which, in turn, increased precipitation in various regions of the planet. As the planet recovered from the devastation, life began to make its way in this new world. The first plants, taking advantage of the warm climate and abundant precipitation, multiplied rapidly, forming dense and lush forests. These primitive forests were dominated by giant ferns and conifers, but over time, flowering plants, angiosperms, began to diversify and eventually dominate the landscape. The competition for sunlight in these dense environments drove an evolutionary race that led to the appearance of taller trees and unprecedented structural complexity in the forest canopy. In this setting, fauna began to evolve specialized adaptations to survive in the rich, yet competitive, environment of the tropical forests. Insects, in particular, developed symbiotic relationships with plants, participating in pollination and contributing to the diversification of both forms of life. Meanwhile, the first mammals, small and mostly nocturnal, found refuge on the forest floor and in the lower strata of the canopy, full of food resources and protection from predators. Chapter 2: Unparalleled Biodiversity. Tropical forests, with their constant warm and humid climate, became the setting for an explosion of life, hosting unparalleled biodiversity on the planet. This chapter delves into the species richness that characterizes these ecosystems, exploring how evolution and complex interactions between life forms have woven a living mosaic of extraordinary diversity. Within this endless greenery, every inch of the forest pulses with life. The treetops, forming a canopy so dense it often prevents sunlight from reaching the ground, are home to orchids, bromeliads, and ferns that cling to branches in a constant struggle for light. This upper layer of the forest also serves as a refuge for brightly colored birds, such as toucans and parrots, whose resonant calls are the soul of the jungle. Insects of unimaginable shapes and colors play crucial roles in pollination and decomposition, while butterflies and hummingbirds act as artists who bring this natural canvas to life with their delicate and precise movements. On the forest floor, an entirely different world unfolds in the dim light. Here, large mammals like jaguars, tapirs, and numerous primate species navigate through a maze of roots and decaying vegetation, playing essential roles in seed dispersal and maintaining the balance of prey and predator populations. Fungi, for their part, form underground networks that connect plants in a forest internet, allowing communication and the exchange of essential nutrients for the forest's survival. Chapter 3: The First Guardians of the Forest. Long before the terms conservation and sustainability were integrated into our global vocabulary, indigenous communities had forged a deep and respectful relationship with tropical forests. These communities, scattered across the vast green expanses of the earth, inherently understood the value and interconnectedness of every form of life within the forest. This chapter explores how the practices and beliefs of these early civilizations can offer valuable lessons for contemporary conservation. Indigenous cultures, from the Yanomami of the Amazon to the Dayak of Borneo, have lived in tropical forests for millennia. Their societies are deeply intertwined with the forest ecosystem, depending on it not only for their material needs but also for spiritual sustenance. Plants and animals of the forest are not seen merely as resources to exploit, but as vital companions in human existence, with whom they share a common fate. The traditional knowledge of these communities ranges from cultivation techniques that enrich and preserve the soil to hunting and fishing practices that keep species populations in balance. For example, the Chagres system, practiced by many Amazonian communities, is an itinerant agriculture method that mimics the natural regeneration of the forest, allowing cultivated areas to recover and maintaining biodiversity. This approach contrasts sharply with the intensive agricultural practices that often lead to deforestation and biodiversity loss. Chapter 4: Roots of Connection and Trade. Throughout history, tropical forests have not only been homes to an astonishing diversity of life but also key stages in human development, facilitating connection and trade between ancient civilizations. This chapter explores how ancient trade routes crossed these green spaces, carrying not only goods but also ideas, cultures, and technologies that helped shape the world. Trade routes in tropical forests emerged as vital veins for exchange between communities and civilizations. In the heart of Africa, for example, paths traversed the dense Congo jungle, connecting tribes and resource-rich kingdoms like gold, ivory, and spices with the outside world. Similarly, in the Americas, the extensive Amazonian and Mesoamerican forests saw the passage of the Maya, Aztec, and Inca civilizations, who established complex trade networks that transcended natural barriers, exchanging cocoa, quetzal feathers, jade, and maize. These routes facilitated not only the trade of tangible goods but also the diffusion of knowledge and beliefs. The forest paths carried languages, writing systems, and agricultural and spiritual practices, creating a rich tapestry of cultural exchange. In Southeast Asia, empires like Srivijaya and Majapahit spread through the tropical forests and along the coasts, using maritime and river routes to establish a trade network that linked Asia with the rest of the world, exchanging silk, spices, and knowledge in navigation and commerce. Chapter 5: The Age of Exploration. During the 15th and 17th centuries, the world embarked on an unprecedented age of exploration, driven by the European desire to find new trade routes and territories. The tropical forests of the New World, with their lush vegetation and mystery, became the focus of numerous expeditions seeking riches, lands to colonize, and souls to convert. This chapter examines how these early European explorations unveiled the existence of these ecosystems to a wider world, marking the beginning of a global biological exchange and an era of exploitation and change that still resonates today. The arrival of Christopher Columbus in the Americas in 1492 symbolized the start of this age of exploration. As explorers ventured into the interiors of these new continents, they encountered vast and dense tropical forests, home to biodiversity and human cultures they had never imagined. These lands, rich in natural resources like gold, silver, and exotic spices, quickly captured the attention of European powers, who saw in them an opportunity to expand their empires and enrich themselves. However, this encounter brought not only the discovery of new lands but also initiated a period of biological exchange that would transform both the Old and New Worlds. European expeditions introduced non-native species into tropical forests, such as livestock, wheat, and sugarcane, while from the Americas, they brought to Europe revolutionary crops like maize, potatoes, and cocoa, which would become staples of the European and global diet. Although the biological exchange had positive effects in terms of diversifying diets and agricultural economies, the consequences for indigenous peoples and the ecosystems of tropical forests were devastating. Diseases brought by Europeans, against which the natives had no immunity, caused the deaths of millions, decimating entire populations and destabilizing complex societies. Moreover, the greed for natural resources led to the rampant exploitation of forests, with the extraction of precious woods and the imposition of agricultural systems that profoundly altered natural landscapes. Chapter 6: Colonization and Exploitation. The arrival of European colonizers in tropical forests marked the beginning of an era of profound and often destructive transformation for these ecosystems. This chapter focuses on the impact of colonization on tropical forests, addressing deforestation for agriculture, resource extraction, and the implementation of slavery as practices that not only altered the natural landscape but also the human societies that had coexisted with these forests for millennia. With the establishment of European colonies, vast areas of tropical forest were cleared to make way for sugar cane, coffee, and cotton plantations, introducing an intensive agricultural model that prioritized export over ecological sustainability. This transformation not only drastically reduced forest cover but also caused soil erosion, biodiversity loss, and alterations in hydrological cycles, with long-term consequences for the ecosystem's ability to sustain life. Moreover, the exploitation of natural resources was a defining feature of this period. The insatiable search for precious woods like mahogany and ebony led to the indiscriminate felling of centuries-old trees, while the extraction of minerals like gold and diamonds further degraded tropical landscapes. These activities affected the health of forests, displaced indigenous communities, and altered their traditional ways of life. Colonization was also marked by the imposition of slavery as a system of forced labor. Millions of Africans were torn from their homes and transported to the New World, where they were forced to work on plantations under brutal conditions. This practice not only constitutes one of the greatest humanitarian tragedies in history but also played a crucial role in shaping the landscape of tropical forests, as slave labor was essential for the maintenance of plantations and the extraction of resources. Chapter 7: The Century of Science. With the advent of the 19th and early 20th centuries, humanity's relationship with tropical forests entered a new phase, marked by growing scientific interest in exploration dedicated to understanding the complexity of these ecosystems. This period, known as the Century of Science, witnessed how naturalists, explorers, and scientists ventured into the green hearts of the planet, conducting studies that would significantly expand our knowledge of biodiversity, ecology, and evolutionary processes. Among the most notable contributors to this body of knowledge were Alfred Russel Wallace and Charles Darwin, whose observations in the tropical forests of South America and the Malay Archipelago were fundamental to the development of the theory of evolution by natural selection. Wallace, in particular, is remembered for his work in the Malay Archipelago, where he outlined what is now known as the Wallace Line, a boundary that marks a clear demarcation between Asian and Australian species, highlighting the richness and uniqueness of biodiversity in tropical forests. During this century, the scientific community began to catalog the astonishing diversity of life in the tropics, describing thousands of new species and documenting the intricate ecological relationships that sustain them. These efforts highlighted the complexity of tropical ecosystems and began to signal their fragility in the face of increasing human pressures. Deforestation, resource exploitation, and climate change emerged as topics of concern among the scientific community, which warned about the consequences of losing these vital ecosystems. Chapter 8: Modernization and its Consequences. The 20th century brought with it an era of unprecedented modernization and development, marked by technological advancement and population growth. This period of transformation did not leave tropical forests untouched, facing them with new and accelerated levels of exploitation and degradation. This chapter examines the impact of 20th century development on these vital ecosystems, including agricultural expansion, oil and mining extraction, and how these factors have accelerated deforestation and habitat loss. The increasing demand for food and raw materials drove a massive agricultural expansion, often at the expense of tropical forests. The introduction of industrialized agriculture, along with the development of new crop technologies and machinery, allowed for the conversion of vast areas of forest into monocultures of soy, palm oil, and other commercial crops. Although these agricultural developments contributed significantly to the global economy, they also resulted in extensive biodiversity loss and drastic changes in ecosystem structure and function. Simultaneously, the search for energy resources led to the exploration and exploitation of oil and gas in some of the world's most remote and biodiverse forests. The extraction of these resources not only involved direct deforestation but also polluted rivers and soils, affecting both wildlife and indigenous communities dependent on these natural environments. Similarly, large-scale mining of minerals like gold, copper, and coltan has devastated extensive areas, leaving behind eroded landscapes and contaminated aquatic ecosystems. Modernization also brought with it large-scale infrastructures, such as hydroelectric dams, roads, and urbanizations, fragmenting habitats and altering migration and dispersal patterns of species. These interventions have reduced ecological connectivity and increased the vulnerability of tropical forests to fires, pests, and other threats. Chapter 9: Conservation Movements. As the 20th century progressed and the impacts of modernization became increasingly evident in tropical forests, a new chapter in humanity's relationship with these ecosystems emerged: the birth and development of conservation movements. These efforts, both at the local and global levels, have sought to curb biodiversity loss and protect these crucial habitats from ongoing threats. This chapter highlights the conservation initiatives that have marked recent decades, spotlighting the role of international organizations, governments, indigenous communities, and civil society in protecting tropical forests. Conservation movements have taken various forms, from the creation of national parks and biosphere reserves to awareness campaigns and environmental litigation. One of the cornerstones of these efforts has been the establishment of protected areas, designed to conserve biodiversity and ecosystem services. Notable examples include Yasuni National Park in Ecuador, Corcovado National Park in Costa Rica, and Taman Negara National Park in Malaysia, each representing bastions of protected tropical biodiversity. Simultaneously, the recognition of the vital role played by indigenous communities in conserving tropical forests has led to innovative initiatives that combine environmental protection with the promotion of indigenous territorial rights. Programs like REDD+, reducing emissions from deforestation and forest degradation, seek to incentivize forest conservation through financial mechanisms that recognize the role of local and indigenous communities in sustainable forest management. Internationally, organizations such as the International Union for Conservation of Nature, IUCN, the World Wildlife Fund, WWF, and Conservation International have played crucial roles in mobilizing resources, raising awareness, and implementing conservation projects worldwide. These efforts have been complemented by international agreements like the Convention on Biological Diversity, CBD, which provides a global framework for biodiversity protection. Chapter 10: Current and Future Challenges. On the threshold of the 21st century, tropical forests stand at a critical crossroads, facing unprecedented challenges that threaten their very existence and the immense biodiversity they harbor. This chapter delves into the contemporary issues these vital ecosystems face, including climate change, ongoing deforestation, and biodiversity loss, while also looking at emerging strategies and innovative technology that offer hope for their preservation and restoration. Climate change poses an existential threat to tropical forests, altering precipitation patterns and increasing the frequency and intensity of wildfires. These changes not only jeopardize the survival of species that depend on specific climatic conditions but also threaten to destabilize the crucial ecosystem services these forests provide, such as global climate regulation and carbon storage. Deforestation, driven by agricultural expansion, mining, and urbanization, remains a formidable challenge, reducing forest cover and fragmenting habitats, which in turn diminishes the resilience of forests to climate change and reduces their capacity to host biodiversity. Despite these challenges, there are reasons for hope. Reforestation and ecological restoration initiatives are gaining momentum, using advanced techniques to revive degraded lands and reconnect forest fragments. Projects like the Atlantic Forest Restoration Pact in Brazil and the Mesoamerican Biological Corridor are showing that it is possible to recover significant areas of tropical forest, restore biodiversity, and improve the quality of life for local communities. To effectively address current and future challenges, a holistic approach is needed that tackles the underlying causes of tropical forest degradation. This includes promoting sustainable agricultural practices, strengthening conservation policies, encouraging responsible consumption, and ensuring that local and indigenous communities are active participants and beneficiaries of forest management. The path to preserving tropical forests is complex and fraught with challenges, but global collaboration, innovation, and a renewed commitment to conservation can ensure that these ecosystems, essential for life on Earth, endure for future generations.